living in Queens. It's just a path. That's all it is, or Jersey City. And I called that number, and that's how I got into the Psychos.
And it was Billy and Stu, right?
Billy and Stu, just Billy and Stu.
Right, right.
And then eventually we auditioned people, and Steve ended up being the guitar player.
But even in the beginning, the Psychos weren't really a hardcore band, right? They was more like a kind of punk, right?
But that's what we all were.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
hardcore didn't really exist.
Yeah. But if there's 2 songs on the United Blood single that are Psycho songs.
What are those?
Fight.
Right.
And which is the other one?
Discriminate Me?
There's Fight, and there's one more. I can't remember. I want to say it's Discriminate. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But I don't think so.
Colossal Man?
No, Colossal Man was another one.
Yeah,
That was a Psycho song.
Mad Balls.
We sang it for Mad Balls. I mean, we had our songs. It was just that the scene wasn't really moving. I mean, it's really crazy because people come up to me and I mean, everybody loves Victim in Pain, whatever. To me, Victim in Pain is a punk record, you know?
Yeah.
It always has been to me. But it was the term started changing, hardcore punk, because of the new wave that was coming in. And the Psychos we were just psychos, you know? It was on the very urge of the punk changing hardcore stuff, you know, like a lot of us were doing.
Right. And so early on, I saw what was later known as Agnostic Front's first show. It was the Zoo Crew.
Right.
I was there, which was Vin, Diego, Robbie Crip Crash on drums, and John Watson singing. Yeah. And at the 2+2, I was actually at that.
Yep.
And so how did you end up in that crew? How did you end up singing for Agnostic Front? I mean, meeting Vinny, right? How did you?
I met Vinny. I met Vinny at the. Physically met Vinny because I used to see Vinny. I used to be entertained by this guy, by the way. I still am. And he had that freaking mohawk he had, but it was taller when I met him, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Some shit doesn't change. Anyway, I met Vinny. You know when the first time I ever saw Vinny was at a show at the Peppermint Lounge,
right.
with the Professionals and the Stimulators, you know, and that was the pit. You know, people were starting to pit. That was kind of a new thing, and Vinny just stood in the middle. He would go the other way. I was like, what is this guy, you know? But I officially met him and John Watson at the show in Queens, where Ever Waste played. At Johnny Wace's birthday bash.
Oh, in the Ravenswood Projects.
Yeah, in the
community center in the projects in Queens.
That's the first time I physically hey, you know, we talked. But Vinny loved the Psychos.
Oh yeah.
And Billy Psycho got beat up that day, like always. Billy Psycho used to, and not in a bad way. I'm not saying he got beat up in a bad way. He just loved getting himself in shit. And
it was a constant.
He would love it. He would come out with a bloody nose. He goes, "Yeah, best show ever." That's what I mean by beat up.
40 to 40. He always had a 40, you know?
That's how he said a show was good or not. He had to come out bleeding or something, you know? That's Billy Psycho. Right. But Vinny then, I remember going, I seen the whole band, same thing like you. Seen him from before I sang with Watson. And then with James Contra, and I saw them here's something that came to me while I was doing this book. It's really funny when you start doing things and you start thinking about, you know, like going through the stories and the lineups and everything. And at one point I realized that everybody that was in Cause for Alarm, the whole band, the early beginnings of Cause for Alarm, was an Agnostic Front. Robbie Crip Crash played drums.
Alex Kynan
played guitar. Kabula played bass. Keith sang. All of members of Agnostic of Cause for Alarms that were on that first single were members of Agnostic Front. So then, to make the long story short, I was asked to just come and sing. I was approached by Rabies and Adamucci at Angry Simone show, Greg Gildersleeve's, and they used to pick their guys. I mean, Vinny should just say this, but they used to pick their guys by who was in the pit, and there was never no musicianship involved or anything. I mean, listen to our first fucking record. You had to be primitive, that's all.
If you represented in the pit hard, you were gonna get recruited. That's basically. And if you had the biggest mouth, you'd end up as a singer.
Yeah. But that wasn't any of me, which is crazy. I mean, not the big mouth. I was always more of a quieter dude. But I was approached. I was always a bass player. I used to fill in for a lot of bands.
Sure.
And it was weird to be asked to sing when I used to play bass and sing, you know. But I went for it. My girlfriend at the time, Chessie, said, "Go do it," you know. And I was hanging out with Tito, I think maybe when they asked me. Tito's here somewhere. You back there? Were you with me when they asked me to sing? Anyway, that's Tito from Warzone, just in case anybody is asking. That's original Warzone back there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how I know Springer was a bit of an influence.
I love Springer.
Who really influenced you as a singer and as a frontman? Who?
I would say Springer for sure. There's no if, what about it. I love SSD Control. Vinny Los Alvarado, guitar player. SSD Control was a very influential band to us. So was Negative Approach. If you look at the song titles we share, are like Negative Approach song titles are also some AF song titles, you know. But I know a lot of you know about the feud, the Boston New York feud. But it's been, it's, you know, like with everything, with time, you know, all of a sudden it was a little boat that sailed to Cuba and this boat is a submarine. You know what I mean? It's stories change. So I wanted to clarify some of that. Yeah, there was a little something, but it wasn't indirectly with any band members. It was more like followers, you know, of anything.
I sort of remember the very early days. It was all good and very early on.
Many times
it was fine, but then eventually it started to get a little weird.
It got weird.
Right.
Got weird, and it was handled quickly, and until date we are all still friends.
Right, and a little something that you mentioned in the book that I think is really relevant is how on the side of the A7 in spray paint it said,
out of town bands, remember where you are.
And that was specifically for that reason.
Yeah, that was there for years. Out of town bands, remember where you are.
Because it wasn't cool for you to be from out of town, come over here and talk shit.
No, it wasn't. No,
and if you did, something happened, and then there's a little friendly warning, you know, dog, don't cross, don't get in, bites, you know.
But so go ahead.
I mean, we were talking about Springer, SSD Control. I mean, there was a lot of good memories.
Who else really influenced you? I know you mentioned Keith, the way you used to hold the mic.
Keith did, of course, because Keith had this weird way of just holding a mic like this. If you look at any early photos of me singing, I love Cause for Alarm, you know. Yeah. And then Keith would go like this, and Springer would swing the mic. I was trying to find myself in a weird way, you know, because all of a sudden I'm playing the bass and I'm singing. But, you know, the crazy thing about it is it was not that I had to sing, you know. I just had to be in the pit. And if you look at some of this early footage, which you guys will, and that Godfather's a hardcore film, you will see it, because I do have film from 1983 of us. I have a whole shows, a lot of beautiful films from stuff from 1983. You will see that all it took was a couple words, throw the mic down, get in the pit.
Yeah. Hey, we want to take a question or two and break this up a little bit. So, does anybody have a question? Anybody? Come on. What the fuck is this? My man, speak loud.
Yeah. How'd you deal with traditional skinheads and whatever outside skinheads outside of New York, and how they can, you know, you guys were a traditional band, and how'd you deal with the fact that they sometimes will come in and talk a lot of shit?
Are you talking about skinheads coming into New York?
Yeah. But I mean, identifying with the Agnostic Front as a skinhead band, and also, being racist and stuff.
Okay.
Well, like I said earlier, we're from New York, man. And
that's right.
We grew up with everyone, you know. Like, look at the scene. Look at the pictures, photos of the scenes. You know, I know people from all walks of life, you know. And first of all, I never understood it. First of all. Because I never encountered anything. I never didn't think any of that exists. I'm so used to living with people. Like, you know, it didn't matter to me, you know. I encountered more of it on the road, and a lot of it more in suburban areas than anything. They're not really in New York City. I'm not saying it didn't exist. And I also there's a chapter in the book where I talk about, like, let's not forget, like, in 1983, let's get specific to 1983. If you put a record out in 1983, if it was from England or something like that, it took about 3 months to get here. And then it took about another, you know, and then it starts going out, and it took another 2 months to get to the West Coast. It's not like we have today with the internet. It's instantly, you know, and we didn't have any of that. So a lot of the stuff that was coming in was trickling in later, you know, and of course it was never really truly accepted in New York City. At some points, sometimes it was some of this stuff was tolerated, but we had to make affirmative lines and what is and what isn't and what shouldn't be. But a lot of that stuff inspired me to write Victim in Pain. I mean, look at the lyrics, you know? And I was more into uniting people than separating people. But there was a time when there was some separation coming. It was an ugly time coming ahead. Not right in the very beginning. Not like 83, 84, even 85. It just started to get uglier. Like right after 80, then 84, 85. And now those were very turbulent times.
Which is bizarre because it's, you know, it's New York City.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I didn't really feel that much of a threat in New York City. I don't think if you did or
No.
anyone did.
I went to public school. I got my ass kicked by everybody on a public school.
I think once you started getting into other suburban areas and you know where it was different, I guess.
Outside urban areas, maybe.
But you know, I think that sort of we'll call it a watershed moment was when Maximum Rock and Roll sort of kind of pegged you guys in a certain as sort of like racist skinheads, and that dragged on for a long time, and it was off the mark and it was ugly, and they were, you know, absolutely unrepentive about it.
Well, here's what was going on with that. You know, anybody could say or talk shit from behind a computer like they do today. And back then it was behind a newspaper or whatever. But if you're not actually living it, it's a whole different story, you know? And the truth of the matter of all that, and I'm pretty much saying it in my book, is that a lot of that stuff put us on the front lines. Put me and Vinny and our band on the front line. Because you could talk all the shit you want, but then we have to deal with the shit. There's a big difference, you know?
When you're out on the road.
When you're on the road and shit starts popping in and coming in. And then where's all those people that talk all this stuff? They're not even there. So a lot of that stuff put put us in a line of danger, pretty much. If you want to get right to the point, you know. And there was a lot of misunderstandings, or it was chaotic, man. It was completely chaotic. But you know, we always what we took out of the whole skinhead thing was we loved the whole working class thing. But we were an American hardcore band. We've always said we were an American hardcore band. And I mean, you had Iron Cross, you had the Effigies, you have 7 Seconds. This is what we kind of liked out of it. Even Negative Approach, John with his head shaved, Minor Threat. This is what we were really grabbing out of it. But then things changed, and when things changed, all those bands I'm just mentioning right now were not really existing. You know, so we had to take a lot of the blunt.
So you had your daughter Nadia at a very young age. In an effort not to raise her surrounded by poverty, you fell into a lifestyle of moving drugs for what seemed at the time to be easy money. Eventually that came to an abrupt end when you were set up and then arrested. You were incarcerated for close to 2 years. How did that experience change your life, and can you lend any perspective to any of the younger people out here regarding the perils of drugs and alcohol? Yeah,
you know, first of all, that was definitely a troubled time in my life, and it was really just when I sit back and look at it, I wrote about it. By the way, One Voice, our album One Voice, is I always consider Agnostic Front's The Wall. I mean, Pink Floyd The Wall,
sure.
or the Who's Quadrophenia. The whole thing from front to back, One Voice is a story. It's that story. It's
a concept.
It's that story of what happened to me going in and coming out. You know. I mean, I fucked up. I made a mistake, but it was a spiraling moment for me. I wasn't out in the street. I wasn't your petty criminal out there. It was easily presented to me. Take this package and bring it to this guy over there, and you're gonna get $200. I mean, my daughter was just. I'm not trying to make excuses. First of all, I'm not trying to make excuses, but it may sound that way. But I'm just telling you what I was thinking. My daughter was just born.
Mm-hmm.
She was sleeping in a chest of drawer, in an abandoned building, surrounded by rats, mice, cockroaches. And I started spiraling. I started thinking of me again, living in poverty, Cuba, the whole thing. And I fucked up. I did what I did. And but not till I was incarcerated did I really think about how many people I hurt. And that's what's an important part of this whole thing, because I was okay dealing with it. I dealt with it fine. I mean, being incarcerated wasn't hard for me, to be honest with you, because I already had dealt with shit on the streets. I was prepared. I was fine. I know what you shouldn't do, what you say, what you shouldn't say. You know, that's when you get in trouble, or what to get, not to get. You know what I mean? I knew those basic things, and I knew I could